Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ryley.
And I'm Ellie.
And today we have a very special guest, someone we're so excited to talk about, Mrs. Christie White, aka Tiki Kiliki. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Absolutely. Aloha.
Yeah, well, we're super excited to jump into all the things that you've done for the Polynesian pop movement. Would you just give the listeners maybe a couple of bullet points of the biggest things you've done?
Well, I would say my greatest contribution was Hulikau, which was the second Tiki weekender in the world, really. Tiki Oasis, of course, has always led, led the torch. But I personally, I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee at the time, and I was really sick of everything happening on the West Coast, and I was really jealous. And I knew we had places to celebrate on the East Coast and on the other side of the planet. So, um, and therein, happened the Hukilau, and it brought so many people together. It brought so many people to the Maikai, and I believe really furthered its life. And, when I was a little kid, I remember thinking, I want friends all over the world and that I can visit. And that's what happened with that event. And, I love that it forged so many friendships. People got married there. People got pregnant there.
More than a few.
I was called Aunt Kaliki, for many years. So I would say that's probably my greatest contribution and achievement in the tiki world for sure.
That's amazing. Now that we've heard a little bit of your highlight reel, tell us how you got into Tiki, about your background there.
Well, it happened at a very young age. I grew up in Anniston, Alabama, and didn't have the most idyllic child life. But what was wonderful about it is after school, I went to an antique store for after school care, and there I mean, I don't know if you can see the background, but they had fun. It was almost as interesting as a child as this room would be to somebody like us, because there were relics from the past. There were, um, big, she had these big antique cars in there. And one thing that I really was drawn to was her record collection, which was all exotica, Hawaiiana, early kind of space age pop type stuff, Esquivel, things like that. And because a lot of those records at that time had picture books. And for a little girl in Alabama, rural Alabama, to open up a picture book and see these wonderful images of Hawaii or Tahiti or, somebody sitting in Don the Beachcomber, I mean, to me,
Yeah,
that was just all, I could escape in that. So I
yeah,
identified and came to know what escapism was without really knowing what it was at a
yeah.
very early age. And I would say fast forward till I was 13, and I found a tiki mug in a Salvation Army, and my mother was like, "I'm not going to buy you that thing. It's so ugly." And I had some allowance money, so I bought it myself, and I snuck it to the car. And fast forward years later to my like early 20s, I started collecting anything I could find. Tiki mugs, swizzles, postcards, things of that nature. And I happened to walk into, I was living in Atlanta at this time, and I happened to walk into a record store, and there was a copy of Tiki News by
Mm,
Otto von Strahm.
yeah.
And there was a copy of Tiki News on the magazine stand, and I actually thought the guys at the record store were pulling my leg. I thought they were, because it was very, it was a zine, it was very kind of raw looking,
Yeah.
um, and turns out they weren't. They actually got it for me, and that opened my world to a whole new perspective because there were other people like me out there. At the time, my collection was pretty small, but that, literally sat down and wrote a letter. Like people don't do that anymore, but at that time in the early 2000s, I sat down and literally wrote a letter to Otto. And I said,
Wow.
I was just so thrilled to find, that there was somebody out there. So that led to, getting more um, involved into trying to find people, which led to a Yahoo group, and which eventually became Tiki Central. So that's how I kind of got into Tiki. It started in Exotica. That's where my roots are.
Mhm.
And so many people find it from so many different paths, but that's how it all the metamorphosis, in other words, happened. So
Yeah.
Wow.
It is. I think it's fascinating because I had a very similar kind of introduction to it. I remember even 10, 12 years ago, I would go to Goodwill and I would still be able to find like 50s records. Now, when I kind of go to the Goodwill, it seems like I find 12 copies of West Side Story. But I was
you always will. You always will.
exactly, yeah, Herb Alpert and West Side Story. But I remember I found Martin Denny live at what I didn't, I was just, oh, Don the Beachcombers, which to me, I was like, Martin Denny is good because I have a couple of his albums by that point, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm just like, yeah, they're sitting in some type of like tropical-esque place. I must have been like maybe like 13 or so,
Uh-huh.
and then
Oh, that's
years
great that you
later,
found that so early. That's
it,
great.
it is really fascinating because I remember when I was living in San Diego, which I mean, this was I mean, this was like 5 years ago. Like, this is pretty recent. And I
Mhm.
was getting into like tiki. I thought like nobody else is into this stuff while living in like one of the mecca cities
Oh
of
yeah. I
tiki.
mean, there's some of the best home bars in the country are in San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
really funny how like tiki finds you and then it just kicks the door open. This is your life now, and and then you build a home bar like the Tapa Room or something.
Yes.
But I am curious about the early days because
Okay.
we hear about how big tiki was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then it just flatlines and it's gone. So
Right.
you mentioned how you found Tiki News, and for anybody who's not familiar with that, that's a tiki zine that was published in the mid started in the mid 90s and it ran till probably what, early 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Um, so you alluded to Tiki Central. So I'm curious. So you're online at this point on Tiki Central. How did you're one of the early adopters of that. Could you talk about your experience on that and then finding people in the local area and kind of spreading the good news of Tiki?
Well, to be honest, there was nobody local um,
To elevate.
near me.
Yeah.
I lived in Atlanta and I lived in Knoxville
Okay.
Yeah.
when Tiki Central really started happening. It used to be a Yahoo group, and then Holden Westland. No, I'm sorry, not Holden Westland. He's from Tiki Farm. But anyway, they moved it over um, to this wonderful website, and Tiki Central was born. And what the magical force behind Tiki Central was that you were suddenly um, at your fingertips. You were exposed to all of these different people with all of these different collections. And they were doctors, they were lawyers, they were bartenders, there were students, they were, I mean, it was people were coming out of the woodwork that used to dance at a Polynesian restaurant in 1958 in
Hmm.
Miami, Florida. And people were just finding this message board, and you had access to Sven Kirsten, you had access to Jeff Barry and Kinkukulele, and all these different people that you didn't really know who they were, but now you were getting to know who they were,
Hmm.
and kind of in that same time period, is when Hulikau started, and I was petrified to contact Sven Kirsten and say, "Will you please come to Hulikau?" And it was
Hmm.
so easy. He was like, "Of course I will. I mean, that's what I do. And I am, the Godfather, so of course I'll be there." And and it just gave you exposure. It excited you. Even a swizzle would be like big news on that website, or a matchbook would be big news on that website, or say someone's dad, worked at, the Kontiki back in, the day, and it made connections that Sven didn't have before. It made connections that Jeff Barry didn't have before, and it most definitely made connections for me that I didn't have before. Because suddenly there was this place where you could go and you could find everybody and everything and it's still the case. It's not as active anymore because it went dormant for a while.
Yeah.
But yet it's still there. They brought it back, and yeah, my life would have never been the same without it, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of those things that's really fascinating about all this, because you're talking about everything is regionalized. You found your first tiki mug locally, which was probably from a local spot, I'm sure.
Yeah, in Anniston, Alabama. Yeah.
And so we're talking about like now at this point it opens. You're not hoping that the local record store has the zine anymore. That maybe they forgot to order it. Now you're not getting it, and all of this. It's like you can reach out to anybody. And what I'm really one of the things I want to know about in the early days is that because everything is so localized, you have access to the antique stores that have the old mugs, or my
Mhm.
dad worked in LA or wherever. Um, what was it kind of like looking at the real-time tiki finds? Like I found this tiki bob and someone goes, "Oh, I have a menu from there." And is there anything that you remember like really riling people up of like either what is this and the history behind it, or like, wow, I can't believe you found this?
Well, I'll show you what I didn't know you were going to ask that, but you'll see this Voodoo Gras glass,
Yeah.
and that is vintage Trader Vic's glass.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into a antique store because back in those days, back in the 90s and early 2000s, you could walk into an antique store, especially in Alabama and rural areas. And right here, there's a couple of military bases. So that's why, like 90% of my collection came from the state of Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
which
Wow.
is
Wow.
remarkable.
Yeah.
But there were several, very substantial military bases here. And I think that's really why I found so much here, is because, like when they would retire or whatever, they would be here. But anyhow, fast forward to this awesome, awesome glass. Um, I was I was traveling and found this antique store between Chattanooga and Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I was like, I've always wanted to go back to that antique store. So we did. And I found 9 of these glasses.
Whoa.
And then I found, if you'll pardon me for a minute, I'll grab something else. This is the same trip.
And for anyone who is listening on Spotify, uh, please go on social media and check out the home bar. Check out these pictures or on YouTube because, yeah, if
Some
you're
really
just
fun
listening, I'm telling you, you're missing something.
So, I would have never believed that you would find. So here's a starboard
Whoa.
port side, port light glass.
Yeah.
So these are the glasses. These are not what Tiki Farm reproduced. These
Mm-hmm.
are Trader Vic's original glasses. And
Wow.
so is the Voodoo Grog. And so these were all found in an antique store for $8 each. And there were
Wow.
9 of each of these glasses. I don't know why, there was such an odd number, but people tend to, I'll put these in safe places. But people tend to, donate things when they don't have even numbers. But I'm
Yeah.
really glad that they were donated for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But
You can make up a fun story about it. Like, yeah, dad worked at Trader Vic and moved here after, like, because who's gonna tell you otherwise? Like,
exactly, exactly. And you're still, a lot of people think that there's nothing else out there. And but like you were sharing a story earlier about your finds today. And like I think it was about 5 years ago, I was searching Facebook Marketplace, and I hate to give people um, that little nugget of information, but um, if you get your searches down, you can probably find some really incredible stuff there. And I found this tiki carved by Leroy Schmaltz from Oceanic Arts.
whoa.
And I found it in Montgomery, Alabama, and there was a price of $600 on it. I believe the same one sold for almost $10,000 at the Oceanic Arts um, um, auction that happened a couple of years ago. And I got this one. I talked them down to $350. And
Wow.
you can maybe see them over my shoulder. I don't know.
Let's see.
But
It's a little dark.
It's a little dark,
it
but we
is
trust
dark.
you that he's there.
I've seen the picture.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's
Yeah,
dark because it should be dark in a tiki bar, but
exactly. I know we're committing a cardinal sin. Anyone watching, these are not the permanent lights. We can change them. We'll turn on the lamps eventually. I mean, I thought we got lucky recently with
Yeah, you were saying about the Facebook Marketplace finds, like Riley's done a really good job honing in his thing and got some amazing Whitco pieces on there.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, I noticed your Wicco
Yeah.
sofa to
yeah,
the, yeah.
we have a hacienda bar. I was on Facebook Marketplace. It was like maybe I think it might have been New Year's Eve. And so I see it old tiki bar spelled Tikki, and it was a hacienda bar with all three stools, and the dude wanted like 300
$300.
bucks, and he was selling it at like a consignment at an Amish market down the road from us. And so I'm
Wow.
messaging this dude. He's like, yeah, no, we open Thursday. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but can you list it as pending or something? I'll be there first thing. And he's like, okay, yeah, I don't know why you want it. And I'm talking to the lady after. She was like, yeah, people didn't want it until I marked it. Because originally they listed it 600, which still would have been a steal. And they were like, yeah,
Yeah.
people didn't start messaging us till I put it up for 300.
I
I
think
mean,
she said 6 people messaged me like 20 minutes after you did.
yeah.
Well,
You did
then
good.
you
So
got it.
I mean, or the one, I mean, I always love it when somebody else gets a good find, but I'm sitting there going, I'm so happy for you. That's great news. Because
Oh,
I saw
yeah.
somebody get a Ren Clark severed head for like $5. I think it was at the end
Oh,
of last year.
gosh. That
I
would
could, I was shocked.
that would be amazing. I've
Right.
never found like all the like the Stephen Crane and things like those kind of mugs that I have over here in my collection. I've gotten those at either events or at on eBay or something like that or Etsy.
Yeah.
Mm.
But in the early days, you could walk into a thrift store and there would be like, I mean, it would be nothing for me to walk out of there with 10 tiki mugs,
Wow.
like
Hmm.
literally. And and then you would find smaller tikis like Coco Joe's and things
Yeah.
like that. There's a guy that lives in Florida. His name is Brian Marsland. Not a lot of people know of him, but he was early on the tiki scene. He knows like a lot of those people in California, and he just moved to Florida, and I think he lives in Melbourne. But if you ever, if I went to his house many years ago, and he has like the Stephen Crane, like the bird bowl, and
Oh, yeah.
he has like 10 deep of those. And then
Wow.
he has like all the Stephen Crane, the clown mug, and like 8 of those. And he has the old Mike, the original Mike Eye, um, um, you know, mystery bowl,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
had like 12 of those. I mean, like the original,
Yeah.
and like all the stuff that was. And he would just say, when you went thrift store shopping in California or antique store shop, this is what you would find. It was just everywhere. It was
Yeah.
everywhere because when those restaurants went belly up, what happened? But all that stuff was donated. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
That's the reason
Or
why,
they,
again, like,
or they would find it in a warehouse years later and just take it to a Salvation Army or whatever.
yeah, give me $2 each for them, not knowing what they would later become worth. And that's the reason why, like, when I
Exactly.
see pictures of the headhunter in San Diego and they have I'm really curious if they know the exact number because I don't want to count them. But how many Mr. Bali high mugs? And now Mr. Bali high mugs are $80 or so, and so
Yeah. Oh,
it's
and he
almost
has a
like
ton. He has a ton more. He just doesn't have them out.
yeah,
That's amazing.
Even his Johnny's and Ilza, they're I've been there, and you trust me. Like if you ever get there, you have to reach out to him. They're very sweet people at the Headhunter. They're just very sweet people. Their entire house is a freaking museum, and outside in that bar is just fantastic. But
Wow.
they're even on their wedding cake, their topper was the Ballet High.
oh, that's
Like
awesome.
I think they were salt and pepper shakers, but they decorated them.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah, it was
cute.
really cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
when we were out in San Diego, I always felt bad because we would go to Falls Idol all the time where like everyone meets up. But I always felt like, people would see me as like, oh, he's the young guy. He's just here to get drunk. And I'm like, I swear I'm not. I've read all the books. I swear I'm just as much as a
But I'm
nerd, but I'm
also here to
trying.
get drunk.
Yeah. Yeah, that's secondary.
Or at least a little tipsy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as you mentioned at the beginning, you are one of the original founders of the Hulikau. Can you talk to us about what that first Hulikau was like and everything that went into it?
Sure. It was incredibly interesting. We had no idea what we were doing. No clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The entire reason that Swanky and I even thought about it was there were three of us that originally founded the event: myself, Swanky, Tim Glazner, and Ford Vox, who lives in Atlanta or somewhere around there. And so Ford was like, "Hey, did you guys realize that all these people from Tiki Central? There was a convention, and I can't remember what type of convention or whatever, but all I knew is there were like 12 people that were coming to Atlanta that had never been there, and we wanted to show them Trader Vic's, and me in my mind, I always want to do something bigger, something
Hmm.
larger, make it,
Yeah.
make it an event. So I was like, we should, do something with Trader Vic's. And then I knew a lot of people in Atlanta from the entertainment world, some club owners and bar owners and things like that. So that's kind of how that happened. Swanky came up with the great name, Hulikau, which is, metaphorically, we were throwing the net out and bringing people
Hmm.
to the event, when a hukilau is actually, they throw the net into the sea and they bring all the fish to shore and then a celebration happens. So metaphorically, we were just bringing tiki fans in and celebrating, but honestly, we had no clue what we were doing. Um, we, we threw a website together. Um, we, had different locations where everything was happening. 3 days before the event was to happen, Trader Vic's called us and said that we could not have the event there at all.
Oh no.
Oh.
And and I said, well, whether you like it or not, there's going to be hundreds of people that descend upon that place. So you can either have somebody manage it for you, or I can wish you the best of luck.
Hmm.
Right.
And so the guy was like, well, you can wish us luck. So I called Sven, and Sven called Trader Vic's corporate, and they got involved, and thank goodness we were able to have the event with Trader Vic's on that Saturday night.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so it kind of happened it totally happened out of jealousy of everything happening in California.
Yeah.
But we had so many magical people come to that first event. Um, Wayne Combs, historic tiki carver
Yeah.
in Florida, who's now passed away. He was there. It became the number one event in Atlanta for that year,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
incredibly proud of that. But still, we had no, no clue what we were doing and what we had created. We knew
Yeah.
it was special and it was wonderful, and we were lucky enough to have a swizzle made. We were lucky, and that was early Tiki days to have that happen.
Hmm.
But like I said, I don't do anything half-ass. I do everything whole-ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone's watching right now and you see the her backdrop, you can tell that that statement is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of like how that happened. And then we moved it to Fort Lauderdale, and we met a couple that weekend. There was a guy that I kept seeing, and he had a great Hawaiian shirt on. And then there was a woman in this beautiful purple Hawaiian dress, and she had gold lame gloves all the way up to her, almost
Oh,
to her shoulders. And I was like, okay, she's like so Hollywood. I have to go talk to her. I mean, she was
Hmm.
like, her hair was just perfect. Everything about her was perfect. And their names were Brielle and Tristan Ishtar. And they live in Orlando still. And without them, the Hukilau you know, would have never ended up in Fort Lauderdale.
Hmm.
And so I thank them from the bottom of my soul for bringing us there, because they came up to us and said, "Have you ever heard of the Mai Kai?" And I was like, yeah, I've got a postcard, from that place, because
Yeah.
at this point I hadn't, yet ventured out, and I'd seen Trader Vic's in different parts of the country, as a kid, but I didn't know that there was, the Mike High or the Valley High, or I didn't know
Yeah.
any of that, and so you know, we eventually went down there, and it blew us away. I mean, for those of us that, love this culture, if you have not stepped inside the Mai Kai, you have no clue what it's about until you step foot in those inside those doors. Because it was so overwhelming. Because if you think this place is dark, you walk into my guy, you can't see a thing. You're coming in from like, the Florida, brightness and
Mhm.
Yeah.
sunshine and palm trees, and you walk into this place and it's just completely immersive. I immediately broke down in tears. It was just for me, that's my church. That's
Yeah.
that's that that's where I feel most comfortable. So yeah, Hokula happened there, and that's still happening there. It's just without me. So
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Hukilau, I think we were holding our breath a little bit over the last couple of years. It shut down and was sold, and everyone was kind of a little bit worried.
The
Unfortunately,
mic, right?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
what did I say?
The
the Mai
Hukilau.
Oh,
Kai.
Hukilau. No, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the Maikai.
That's okay.
The Maikai was sold, and then the hurricane hit it. What 2 years ago, I believe, or about a year ago, before it opened,
Yeah, yeah.
somewhere around there. And but from what we've seen, we have unfortunately not made our way down there. So
Have
we
you
have
ever been?
no.
Oh, you have to go. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to sell everything you own and go. No, it's so special. I wish you could have gone before it sold.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but to have the family there when you visit there each and every time
Mm.
is very special.
Yeah.
But to me, the Maikai has its own feeling. I don't know if you've ever been inside a building or a home where you feel as though it has its own life,
Yeah.
because it's been around for so long. And so, the Maikai to me, she's alive, and my parents' ashes are there. I mean, that's
Wow.
how special it is to me. Some of their
Yeah.
ashes are there, and it's just and then my friend Tom Alsmiller did all the he was in charge of all the renovations there, the creative director, and from what I hear, he's done an amazing job, and I'm so proud of him.
Hmm.
And I get to go May 7th through the 11th. I'm going to go to my every time I go down there, I go to the Maikai every single day I'm there, every single
Yeah.
night. And but I can't wait to go and see it again. It's the
Yeah.
most special place on earth. I know people say Disney is, but that's not true. That's not.
Yeah. They
It's the
barely sell
Maikai.
alcohol in the parks. What can makes it special about that?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I definitely understand. It's kind of like going to the Tiki Tea. When you go there
Yeah.
and you have the family, you have the history, and everybody who walks up to the bar,
Oh
like
yeah.
Tiki Tea is a mecca because everyone who goes there seems like they love it. Like
Yes.
not just the bar, but the people, everything about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, if there's that at the Maikai, I definitely understand why it's a very special place.
Yeah, part of the reason why, the Tiki T is, lasted for so long and it's still so special is because that family, the
Hmm.
Green family. And they care so much about the people that are there, and so much about their family and their connection. I mean, they involve you in conversation there. They toast Ray Buin,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's like it's just it's such a community. Without Tiki, I don't know how my life would have turned out. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, special.
Definitely. So another thing, so we're at this point is the Hukilau is going. The people are, you have Tiki Central, you have different avenues where people can discover and explore and intermingle with each other. I'm curious about your experience of going to home bars. Like, do you have any early memories of that? And another thing is that we're talking so much about the vintage. And we've talked about Tiki Farm and other artists who slowly started throughout the late 90s, early 2000s, started creating new stuff. I'm curious, when you went to home bars, what was the mix like? Was it mostly relying on the vintage, or were people doing a lot of DIY or buying art from new artists?
Um, It was focused on the vintage, and then you would have your occasional party city kind of stuff that came out, And one of the first home bars I went to was my friend Dave Wolf. He's also known as Basement Kahuna. And the Bob and Leroy from Oceanic Arts called him a one-man Oceanic Arts. And I'll tell you a little bit about when you ask about my future escapades, what what he's going to be doing for me. But anyway, he's popular among like the early 2000s crowd because
Hmm.
he did a lot of incredible work. But the first time I went to his bar, and he'll probably kill me for saying this, he had a few things in there, and he was like, "What do you think about this?" I'm like, "No, I would take that out." And then he had like stuff that he had carved, and he had a lime tree in there, and he had all this. But yeah, definitely relied on the vintage. But people were beginning to do their own things. They
Hmm.
were beginning to, do their own trim work inside the bar. They were beginning to paint their own, scenery. An early home bar that I went to, and like Seattle had an entire mural, on the wall, which is very infamous, at
Hmm.
early Mike High had a mural behind the bar. And Damon's, in California, they have a beautiful mural on the wall.
Yeah.
And they were already trying to recreate the environments in their own home. And they were
Hmm.
doing a pretty bang up job of it. And it's wonderful. I forget, I think it's Fugu Lounge. Is that what those guys that
They do all like the styrofoam, or not styrofoam, but like
yeah, they need their own symposium. I mean, I don't know
yeah,
who these event producers, but they need to get on that and get
yeah.
those people in there, and so they can show, because not everybody has, and and I think they're living in rentals right now, and not everybody has the ability to create an environment like this. So it's great that I really think that those parties like when like at Tiki Oasis and at Hulikau, when you would take a hotel room, and just completely trick it out, and
Yeah.
they would do you know, the room parties. I
Hmm.
think that really inspired. I mean, to me, I don't know if it inspired Fugu Lounge people like that, but that was the early days of creating it yourself, of the
Yeah.
DIY stuff. Because I don't know if you've ever seen photos of the room parties and the
Hmm.
room crawl. But God, I couldn't believe it when I went to Tiki Oasis, and these people, I mean, first of all, this hotel allowed these people to do this,
Yeah.
because it would just be full on tiki immersive, you know, and this was in a hotel room. This is
Yeah.
in a hotel room with a number on the door. And there would be like this huge line outside, and you'd finally get in, and it was just it was crazy. But yeah, I think people were dabbling in it, but you didn't see as many home bars then as you do now. And I'm so glad to see that part of it happening, It's still happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, I mean, Polynesiacs, the book that
Yes.
showed a number. I know he's out on the road right now taking more pictures, I think, for his blog.
Yes.
But if anyone has not seen that book, make sure you buy that by Tiki Tom Tom. Because it's the same thing. I mean, uh, home tiki bars comes in all different types of shapes, sizes. I mean, some people build full other buildings on their property to house
Yes.
their stuff. And so, and other people I've seen, some people, there's I don't remember his name, but he has like a tiki closet. Like you open it up, it's like a just normal like coat closet, but it's totally done up with tapa and
Oh,
lamps and everything. It's
wow.
very cool. Yeah,
Very cool.
I don't remember his Instagram name, but yeah.
So
Me
as
either. You
been
need,
talking,
I mean, I have people that have tiki bath, friends of mine that have entire tiki bathroom. And
wow.
Wow.
it's just fun, it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's fun.
It creeps into every area of your life.
Absolutely. Yes.
So we've been talking about the home bars, and you have your own home bar, the Tapa Room that we're seeing right now. How did this develop over time?
Well, I had a couple of other home bars. Um, and honestly, all of this that I have now was in, except for a few pieces, were in storage because I
Mhm.
just didn't have, at one point we thought we were going to build an outdoor structure
Okay.
in the backyard. And then, once my husband, knew that I might, um, sell a lot of it, he was like, no, no, we're not doing that. we need to turn this room into, the spare bedroom into, into a tiki bar. And so I had to get my head around it for a minute, because when your life is so focused on tiki, and I'm sure Sven can relate, and many other people can relate. But when you do a tiki event and that's all you do, like for 15 years, you kind of need it to go in a box for a minute to appreciate it
Yeah.
all over again. And so honestly, what happened is we went to California. We went to see a couple of friends in Orlando, and we came back and we were so inspired by that trip that we were like, it's time that we do this. And here I thought, we're going to get it done in a couple of weekends. Yeah, because I didn't know what we're getting into, but it took us 9 months to do it.
Mhm.
There were several things that we changed as we did it. That's why I advise, when people ask, they do contact me and ask me things on Instagram, and they they ask me what would, like, should I just, map everything out first? And, my suggestion is to them is no, let it happen organically.
Mhm.
Because, my bar was supposed to be on the other side of the room. And then just by finishing that wall, we had to move it to the other side. And I'm like, duh, that's where the bar belongs. And, so there was all these different things that happened as we were constructing it. And it's, it's such a special thing to have a place like this in your
Mhm.
home.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to open it up to our community and invite strangers, total strangers over here. We've done it
Wow.
several times. We've been very fortunate. No one's killed us yet. Uh, but and we've come to know local bar owners and local restaurant owners, and 'cause we'll go out for a drink, and people, oh, you own that tap room place, right? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's us. And we get in the conversation, and we break bread together, have some rum, and but the bar was a long time coming. This is the most immersive space I've ever had, um, and it's it's very special. And I hope you guys get to come one day.
Yeah,
Yes, that'd be so
absolutely.
fun.
You're definitely
Yeah,
invited.
we'd be honored.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Oh,
I
sorry.
think most people continue growing their collection over time and they feel like it's never really complete. Do you think that there's anything specific in the Topper room where you want to change or there's work to be done, or do you feel like it's just adding those little touches now?
Well, it's so small that if we do any more work in here, it's probably gonna capsize. But um, I mean, there's always room on the ceiling. I mean, that's what one of my things is always look up, because the ceiling is never complete and it's never going to be the same the second time you come. And there's so I look around right now, and there's several different little spaces that we can create some memory, or some piece of a giant shell, or um, all kinds of different stuff. But uh, we possibly, if we add on to the back of the house, which we want to do, we'll probably break through the other wall though. But that might change, because we have a project coming up that, if you ask, I will tell you.
Okay.
Very well. You have a project coming up, I hear.
Well, we're hoping and praying that this is going to happen, but for a very long time, I thought my next move was to open a commercial tiki bar.
Yeah.
And at
Wow.
this time, Birmingham doesn't have an authentic tiki bar.
Yeah.
They have a wonderful cocktail bar that they call a tiki bar, but it's really not. It's
Hmm.
more of a tropical bar, and they have great drinks there. Um, but I feel led to do that in this city, and to bring, a place like the Tapper Room to life, that many people can enjoy at one time.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and I've never spoken about the name, but it will be called the Sunken Pearl. It will be built
Wow.
out, built out by Basement Kahuna. also known as David Wolf. And you know, it'll have a lot of, you know, people that we all know and love in the tiki world. They'll, you know, hopefully have a part in it, even if they just send me a freaking like piece of wood to stick on the wall. But
Well, if we can provide anything, hey, let us know. We'll happily, even if it's just a little bit of free labor and in exchange for some rum, I'll fly down in a weekend.
yeah, there you go. There you go. It's going to be great. Hopefully it'll happen. We do have a couple of spaces in mind here in downtown Birmingham, but this is the first time I've ever talked about it. So there you go. You have a world exclusive.
There we
Very
go.
exciting.
First heard for everyone. Thank you. That's awesome. You know, I am curious because you said you opened it up to the community. I'm sure Alabama is probably not known for its rum consumption or you know, I'm curious, what is it like when you bring somebody over to a place like yours? Are they just instantly like taken aback or what's that like?
Well, you know, when we put a call out to everybody, I want to make sure they understand they're coming to a home.
Hmm.
I want to get their feeling of why they want to come. You know, some people have messaged us and said, "Oh, I love tapas. I love Spanish food." So, you know, that's somebody we you know that doesn't really get it. You know, we want to make sure that people get it. We had someone come over that didn't know anything about tiki at all. And now we've turned them on to a great rum bar in town called Cayo Coco. Um, and they, you know, we saw him there like a couple of weeks ago, and he was just like, man, I just love that experience over there. But yeah, they're pretty like I film reactions when people walk in here because they you know it's almost overwhelming to people, you know, because like we've had people in here that have only been to like Trader Vic's Atlanta. We've had
Yeah.
people that have been to, you know, Three Dots and a Dash, and you know every Trader Vic's in the world, and you know, and there's, you know, their reactions are very positive, and there's tons and tons and tons of questions that follow, you know,
Yeah.
and there's tons and tons and tons of rum that follows too.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and I'll make one more point about the home bar. You know, I think it's probably this week. It's been 1 year since I've been building this out, and I feel like recently, not in like a bad way, but I've taken like 3 steps back because I removed a shelf, and now I'm like I have to fill that space somehow, and then I
Yeah.
put up like some floating shelves, and I'm like, well, I have to decorate them. So anyone out there that may feel like I can get it done in a weekend, or they're not sure how long it takes, the answer is it's
Forever?
yeah, forever, it feels like.
Yeah, because even like I've got some Wicco pieces, and well, we have the Wicco suite is next door to the Tapper room, so it's a room that's all decorated in Wicco and Bosco, and so but I've noticed that, you know, I'm going with this theme now in there, this color theme, and now I've got to take a couple of pieces out, and I've got to somehow figure out how to you know put them in here in the Tapper room.
Yeah.
But I like that. You know, it's never done. It is never ever done. If
Mhm.
you are a true, you know, tiki file, if you are someone that loves this culture and loves the people and loves the music and the clothing, I mean, it's never ever over. I mean, it's just not. I mean, I'll be having, you know, things made for me, and I'll be looking for Hawaiian dresses until I go to the nursing home. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, and when
At
you're in
one point, I'll only be there with every moo that I own.
exactly.
Packing only the essentials.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, and the nurse I'll be working there is like, I guess she was really into Spanish food or something. I don't know, tapas.
I know, right?
So we
Have
talked
you seen the
about
weird lady that wears all the Hawaiian stuff? You should go past her room.
yeah. So we talked about how you got started in it. We talked about the early days, the development of the Hukilau, and bringing what was it like to bring Tiki home, and not just for you, but for a lot of people. Now I'm kind of curious, just for some of your opinions or perspectives on kind of where things are at today. So I mean, and I'll just give my maybe ill-informed 2 cents on this. Is that because maybe I got into it through Exotica and through looking at the vintage stuff, I viewed it as almost an encompassing thing. It is just about the music as it is about the drinks, as it is about the art, so on and so forth. But I've kind of noticed maybe with some people, the shift is that tiki is more akin to cocktails than, or people who are starting bars, like, yeah, they're a tiki bar, but really a cocktail bar. Um, I'd be interested to hear if you think maybe the perspective of tiki has shifted or where kind of the movement is going from here.
Well, I'll tell you, many years ago, I said publicly that the future of tiki is in the cocktail.
Hmm.
And I think that is why tiki's lasted so long. The revival has lasted so long. There has to be something that keeps every kind of subculture going. Um, I mean, there are people that still walk into a tiki bar and order a Mai Tai and expect it to be made with pineapple juice and grenadine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's happening far less now than it used to. Thanks to the efforts of Jeff Beachbum in my
Hmm.
opinion. Without him, you know, uh, I'll go to the past for a minute. I love to hear these stories, or I mean, they're good friends of mine now, but like I used to love to hear their stories of, and I would ask them, how did you guys meet? How did that all happen? Well, it happened at a party. Like
Hmm.
they were just having a freaking, tiki drinks party. And like Jeff meets, Otto meets Finn, and Jeff meets Finn. And like that's how it all, happens so organically and magically. That, but, I guess what I'm trying to say is, without these people, and especially without, Jeff, the cocktails I think would have made remained a mystery. And
Hmm.
I think maybe people would have, because there's so many bars out there like creating brand new tiki cocktails that are fantastic, you
Yeah.
know, and I love that that's still happening. And but I really honestly believe, it's my humble opinion, that the revival wouldn't have lasted this long without Jeff Barry bringing the tiki cocktail back to the consciousness of America and the world.
Yeah.
Honestly. That's just my humble opinion. That's my two coconuts.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's I mean, you look across the America right now and you see basically a major tiki bar opening up in almost every major city
Yeah.
within the last 5 years or so. Even
Mhm.
I remember I was listening to an interview recently, I believe, with Sven, and he was saying that he thought kind of when COVID hit, like, okay, that's it. It's going to go to the homes, and the people who are into it are going to stay into it. And but I mean, right now it seems that really there's no signs of slowing down. I mean, Bamboo Ben is working on that place in Vegas that looks like it's going to be massive. Trader Vic's is coming back to Los Angeles for the first time in a couple of decades, and
Oh, it still kills me that they tore the one at in Beverly Hills. I mean, oh, but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. That I mean the original Trader Vic's out in Beverly Hills, the open
Oh,
that walkway in.
oh, it's just tragedy. It's a tragedy. Don't make me cry. Don't make me
Fair
cry.
enough. Fair enough. No, it really does seem that it's, the overcorrection of like we destroyed all of them, now we're bringing them back. And I know there maybe there's people out there who are semi-cynical to say like, oh, oh, we're hitting a peak now. Everyone's going to be tired of it. Other people are saying we're not there yet. And it sounds like you're kind of more on the side that it's just going to keep growing if I'm getting that right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to hit a peak. I think it's going to hit, you know, like a mountain per mountain per mountain per mountain. Because
Hmm.
like when people, because it I don't want to say it's kind of morphed into something else, because it really, I mean, the foundation of Tiki, the Aloha spirit, is still there in so
Hmm.
many of these places that we visit. But people are doing it differently. There was a time where I really worried about it, because people were, I don't know, the thing was to, let's get dressed up and take a bunch of photos. And I know that sounds bad, but to me, this is my life. This is a part of my heart and a part of my soul.
Right.
So, to walk into a brand new tiki bar now and see someone embracing it, to see a young couple like yourself,
Hmm.
and to see you embracing it and wanting to document it like you are, that is that's the kind of stuff I love. Is because you are you're a brand new, I don't know if you have a channel or what your
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brand new. So, I mean, there's still people out there finding an avenue to share it with people and share it in different ways. So, I don't think it's going to peak. I think it's going to keep going this time
That's
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Sunken Pearl and your prospects for a commercial bar. Are there any other new projects that we have to look forward to?
Well, we have some glassware being produced for the Tapa Room.
Hmm.
And I was supposed to go to Tiki Go this year. If you guys haven't gone, you should definitely go.
Okay.
Definitely.
That is I mean, the first year was last year and it blew me away. It was like a well-established event on its first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it was real, and they're doing it better than anybody in Florida right now. That's what I'll say. But
Fair enough. No further questions.
but anyway, oh gosh, I forgot the question. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
What other new projects do we
Oh
have
yeah.
to look forward to?
I was supposed to speak there just about putting together the Tapa Room. I hope to do that next year in 2026. Um, I have my Mai Kai tattoo being worked on in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Oh,
So it's nice and fresh for my visit.
yeah.
But, and then we have, another event happening to the public, when we throw out the invitation to the public and let them send us requests, and we'll always have that happening.
Yeah.
Until I don't know if I'll do that anymore once we have a commercial space, but
Right.
Yeah.
but who knows?
Amazing. And where can people go to find you or the Tapa Room?
They can go to Instagram, and that is and the Tapa Room handle is Tapa 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 Room Beham BHAM, and that's short for Birmingham. If anybody didn't catch that. And then my personal Instagram is at Tiki Kiliki, and that's lots of I's, lots of K's. But it's Tiki Tiki, and then Kiliki Kiliki.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. I love to to do these types of things because it gives you a different perspective, and you can kind of travel down memory lane, which is also a wonderful
Yeah.
thing to do. So.
No, and it just sounds like you keep bringing people together, which is amazing. You started it with the Hulikau, and you're still doing that today. And so we definitely appreciate you sitting down with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. You guys, I won't take you not visiting for an answer. You have to come. You have to come to
Right.
Tapa Room, and it's a good thing we're wrapping up because I'm out of my Mai Tai and it's time to
Oh, now that's an issue.
make.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Aloha, everybody.
Well, we promised you a good interview, and we certainly hope that we delivered.
Because we definitely had a great time recording it.
Definitely. And if you're in the Birmingham area, keep an eye out for the invites to Christie's home bar, the Tapa Room, or any new updates about her new commercial bar, the Sunken Pearl.
Now, get ready as we transition over to our artist spotlight. Again, this is the portion of the show where we get to speak with those people who are doing the hard work of creating here in the Tiki space. This week, we have the pleasure of speaking with Zack and Mahalia of Zahiki Tiki.
We hope you enjoy it.
Hi, and welcome back to the Tiki Talk Show. I'm Ellie.
I'm Ryley.
And today we're here with Zack and Mahalia from Zahiki Tiki. They live in Texas, and they're here for our artist spotlight today. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
So we want to start off by asking you how you got into Tiki, a little bit of your background there.
Yeah, Mahalia, do you want to go first with your introduction to it?
Sure. So I am from Washington, so I grew up with like the nautical side of it. I lived on base there, and so we would go to the beach all the time. I collected shells, and that was my thing. And then I moved here. I got with him, and he was into the Disney side of Tiki, and so he liked the decor there. And as we got into Tiki more, and I just like the history of it. And
Yeah, that's a good sum up. I grew up going to Disney World, and so my introduction was like pretty much the tiki room, as most people's is. And then they kept going. My family liked to go on beach trips and kind of the nautical side. And so I knew that going around. And then my parents had like a beach kind of themed patio area, and she kind of liked tikis. And so I think I picked up like a tiki decanter and some glasses at like a thrift store or something that were vintage, and I thought they were cool. And then I gave them to her. Didn't really think much about it. And then down the line, there's a YouTuber who we watch. His name is Justin Scard. He has a YouTube called Random Land, and he used to go to Oceanic Arts and do these little funny videos. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool place. You know, they have all this stuff to do with Disney history and all of this other fun stuff. And then next thing I know, Oceanic Arts is closing, and he's talking about this book that's coming out. And I'm like, well, dang, I never got to go. And I was like, well, maybe I should get this book and read about it. And about that time, I start digging through, and then I find that Justin was on Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour a couple times. And so then we started watching that, and then we became friends with Spike. And then, or we talked to him briefly, and then we went to one of the closing ceremonies at Oceanic Arts put on by Peekaboo, and we didn't get to meet Leroy, and we didn't meet Bob the first time.
Yeah, they had partied the night before, so
yeah,
they had gone home. And
They were partied out.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they were big celebrities that whole time, which was perfect because they totally deserved it. And we had ended up meeting Justin in person, and then he introduced us to Spike, and then to Sven, and then we got to meet some of the organizers.
We met Jordan.
Yeah,
who
Right
ran
Check,
Peekaboo.
and Kiara Geller, and Joe Campana, and several other ones. And they were like, "You should come back tomorrow." And we had sculpted these miniature little tikis that we had wanted to give to Bob and Leroy and stuff. And they're like, "Well, they're not here. Come back Monday morning before your flight. Bob will be in shop." No one else was there. There was like except for workers. And so we got to go back. And then Bob just walked around with us in Oceanic Arts for like 2 hours when everything was set up like a museum with all the lights and stuff. And it was like, he was like, "Oh yeah, I got all this old stuff we bought back here." And he's just like boxes of tikis on the floor. And he's like, "Yeah." And he starts like kicking the box. And he's like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do with all this stuff." And I'm like, "I want all that." But and so yeah, from there, I was like, "Okay, I'm hooked." We flew back. We started collecting stuff.
That's when we really dove into it because we couldn't drink at the time, so we just went very decor heavy in our tiny 600 square foot apartment.
Yeah, because at the time we were, I think I was 20 and Mahalia was 19, so we couldn't get in. Bob had even offered to make us Mai Tais, and I turned it down, and I've regretted that ever since. And I'm like, and then yeah, so our joke with all of our local tiki friends was that they're like, "How are you finding all your stuff that you do?" And I'm like, "I'm just spending all my rum money on like decor and lamps and that stuff, and building up that inventory almost, or like our collection, before we got into, or we were legally able to drink and start partaking in that stuff."
Yeah, and especially before we were able to drink, Swizzle here is the only bar that's like, they have food, so they're family oriented more. So we were allowed to go to Swizzle before we were able to drink. And so we have like a monthly tiki meetup where we go around all the bars here. So we would be able to go to that one every 3 months. And then once we were actually of age, we got to meet everyone else that goes to the other bars. And so we just dove even further.
That's awesome.
You had a chance to build up your reputation first. Like, who are these guys? These young kids that are into this. I heard they have a great collection somewhere. So you mentioned how you were building up your stock and slowly piecing things together. So you guys you make lamps now. Can you talk to us about how you jumped into that? Because I've seen a lot of people try to get into it, and it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world. Can you talk about the learning curve and then how it is now, now that you're selling them?
Well, we were definitely lucky with how it started. So it was after the auctions and everything, and we have like the catalog book, and they have the dimensions and everything that they use for it. And at the time we worked at a community theater, so we had all these big machines we could use. We had plywood that was free for grabs. And so any scraps that we were just going to toss, we would be like, "Oh, that would be a perfect ring for a lamp." So we'd try it out. and we just like were able to use our shop supplies.
Yeah,
using it.
we just kind of started stockpiling material, like because when you really like dissect some of these like vintage lamps, and they're made out of the rice plantation hats or like rattan waste baskets, and then you start getting the minute details of like well this. I mean, some of them have these like curly Q patterns in them or like circles, and so then I start looking for those, and so then I have like in our shed I have like 10 different style baskets, 7 different size hats. Then there's like woven like Wahala like braided I don't even know what you'd call it, but it's like a thin braided Wahala and stuff.
Like
You
a
can use
ribbon.
like a ribbon almost to wrap around stuff, and then you start like kind of layering that. But I just have totes of like random material that I've saved up. I'm like, oh, this could be a great lamp material piece or lamp hardware I'll salvage from other lamps. But since we worked in the theater, we had that kind of construction mindset. And I've always been very hands-on with a lot of my stuff, and so it was kind of was natural in my head, but definitely trying to figure out like overcoming like cutting bamboo is a big issue. Anyone who's tried slicing it or cutting it knows that the success rate is very small because a lot of our early ones, the bottoms would be like inch long cuts of bamboo, and so you would see all the circles and it looked really cool, but you would be cutting on a chop saw or on a table saw, and it would just like every third would just explode and shoot everywhere, and so it was a lot of prep time, clean up, and
Needed the PPE to protect yourself.
yes, and so
Yeah.
Blow up.
but it was a lot of trial and error, and since we did have the extra material and the time to experiment, I got really good at carving with like an angle grinder with a carving disc, and so I could kind of freehand a lot of like post and smaller carvings.
We started doing palm fronds when the freeze came by here and killed some palm trees, so people were throwing those out. And then once we got good at making lamps, we had so many just from us doing them. We're like, oh, we should probably like try and sell some of these.
Yeah.
So we talked to Jen, who owns Swizzle, and she does the Dallas Tiki Week. And so she was like, we would love to have you guys as a vendor. She has some of our carvings in the restaurant. And so we had a little booth, and we learned very quickly that we did the dimensions exactly how OA did them. But most people don't have 10-foot ceilings like we do. And so if you do a 2-foot tall lamp, no one's going to have room for that.
Yeah, we were making them very commercial grade size, and most people can't handle that because their tiki bars are a lot smaller. And like we're lucky to have the space we do and the height we do. And so yeah, we had all these big lamps, and I thought it looked great. And I don't think we sold a single lamp that whole thing. And so it was really defeating at first. And then well, we're like, okay, let's rework this. And so for the next show, we had done some smaller ones, and those were a little bit more.
We had like shell lamps that we sold, and then because those got out, the owner of Uncharted down in New Braunfels, they were like, hey, we really like your lamps. Can we commission you? And we did our first resin bottom shell lamp. So that's in their entryway at that bar.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and like I love shell lamps. They're really heavy. If y'all ever decide to do one, it does take a lot of shells. I have a shell stockpile in our material space where I had just like boxes of different size Capizzi shells and clam shells and a lot of scallop shells. The scallop shells are the most ones that you'll use and stuff, but trying to find the pure white ones is really hard, and especially to keep in consistent sizes. But every once in a while you'll run across an estate sale where the lady was a shell crafter, where they would make like the shell animals and stuff, and so you'll find a bunch of these big shells or all that type of stuff mixed in. And I remember one day I filled like 2 or 3 IKEA bags full of shells and I lug it to the car, and those are some heavy bags. But yeah, it's a lot about storing material, and not a lot of lamp makers like to keep a lot of their secrets very tight-lipped, and they don't like them getting out, which I don't understand why necessarily. Like I understand they're trying to keep their business, but that's what's hard, and these are some of the best things about tikis, these like gorgeous lamps. And so I have a lot of people be like, how do you make a shell lamp? How do you do resin? And so And I've had to ask a lot of those questions myself, and I've had a lot of pushback. But it should be out there more. And there's luckily a couple of really good. There's some Facebook posts and talking about doing shell lamps and the deconstruction of actual ones, and so you get to see the inside and how they use chicken wire and thin like picture hanging wire to tie them on. And so it's like certain things like that you learn and pick up and stuff. But those Facebook groups are a big help sometimes when you start dissecting stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, and just be like, oh, I made that.
Yeah, for sure.
Where do you guys see this kind of progressing in the future? Are you going to continue to just kind of make them out of your home? Is this something you want to be more of a full-time job with, or is it going to stay a hobby for you?
I mean, full time would definitely be fun for sure. But I do think we are trying to ramp up more. There just doesn't seem to be not that there's not a market for it, but it's hard to get the word out.
Yeah, which I do like appreciate that you all do this segment on your show now about trying to showcase different vendors and stuff. And yeah, because we were doing it really heavy for a while, and then sort of got burnt out and stuff just because like all of our friends had already bought lamps from us and stuff, and so like the market, and we haven't really got to travel to outside state events or meet new people and stuff like that, and so it's kind of a standstill. And then I shifted more towards doing a lot of tiki carving with hand chisels and stuff like that, and I got enjoyment out of that. And I was doing that for a while, and then after I think it was like right before Tiki Week last year, someone broke into our shed and stole all of my carving equipment.
Oh no!
All my carving chisels and chainsaws and all that stuff. So I've been slowly trying to rebuild that that equipment. Yeah, but getting some of those carving chisels is challenging and stuff. But yeah, so I do think sometimes I enjoy doing tiki carvings more than lamps because there is a lot of lamp makers, but then there's also a lot of tiki carvers. So it's good to have that where you can do both sides and explore different alleys of market space and stuff. And if there's a whole bunch of lamp makers at one point, then you do tikis, and then vice versa. You can switch it up. And
yeah,
so, yeah.
It's nice because we have definitely expanded of what we can do. So like we've done palm fronds, we've done the lamps. We sold a table that we had carved into, and it had a what was the name of it?
It was like a abalone resin top, and that sold to a local guy here in Dallas. And so it's fun stuff like that. And luckily with like the local shows, it does help get meet a lot of new people who especially aren't in the inner circle or the local groups that yeah. And so but yeah, it's a learning curve for sure, but just a lot of trial, and don't be afraid to mess up, but also be careful because some of this stuff is hazardous and dangerous.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they want to either commission a lamp, buy what you already have, or just reach out if they're going to be in your area? Where can people find you?
We have a Facebook and an Instagram. They're both the same name. It's Zahiki Tiki. I can spell that too. It's Z-A. Hold on.
I think they can also put it in the description of the show as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll make sure to drop all your stuff. Is there any plans for like either a website or Etsy store and all of that?
We might. We had a little website for a little bit, and then we didn't put stuff on it, so we kind of got rid of it. But we might want to do that up again in the future.
Yeah, we had like a cartel webpage, like what Spike uses for his stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to him about how to set that up.
We had also done like carvings and necklace pennants and stuff like that for a bit.
Yeah, like clay stuff.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so definitely, but we mostly interact on either through Facebook groups or Instagram is where we post most of our stuff and chat with most people and stuff.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for talking with us today. We we're gonna make sure we get all your stuff out, and so anybody who's listening, make sure you check them out. Zahiki Tiki again on Instagram and Facebook. Hit them up if you're gonna be in the area, or hopefully buy a lamp. Thank you guys for talking with us.
Awesome.
Thank you so
y'all.
Thanks again to Christie, Zack, and Mahalia for joining us for this week's episode. You can find Christie on Instagram at Tiki Kiliki, and you can find Zack and Mahalia at Zahiki Tiki. All of those will be linked down in the show notes so you guys can see that easily, all the spelling, and follow them onto Instagram.
And we hope that you check out our social media at YouTube at The Tiki Talk Show or Spotify at the same, or reach out to us on Instagram at Kona Cove_Home Tiki Bar. And again, if you're doing anything interesting, art or music-wise or anything else in the tiki space and want to reach out to us via email, or if you just want to leave us some kind words, you can do that on Spotify and YouTube by leaving us a 5-star review or just emailing us directly.
We hope to see you next week.
It was good talking to you.